Friends, welcome to the Oxfordshire Community Hub. We are delighted to have with us as our guest, Lady Jay of Ewelme, CBE, our former High Sheriff of Oxfordshire. Lady Jay, welcome to the Oxfordshire Community Hub.
Thank you.
What is the role of the High Sheriff and what might it entail?
Well, this is an unpaid appointment, the appointment being made by the Queen on recommendations from the Lord Lieutenant of the county concerned. And it lasts normally for exactly a year. In my case, it was a few days short because of the virus, but normally about a year. The role has been in existence in England, certainly, for over 1,000 years. And to begin with, the High Sheriff, called originally a Shire Reeve, had a role rather akin to a sheriff in a cowboy film, in that he or she, it was normally he, could raise posses or hue and cries, could collect, in fact had to collect, tariffs on behalf and taxes on behalf of the monarch, and generally act rather like a local magistrate. This was not a popular role, as you might imagine, going around trying to take money from people. And the custom came into being of pricking the name of the High Sheriff when it was presented to the monarch on a sheet of foolscap. And the pricking was with a bodkin, and it was done because it was impossible to erase the little hole made by the bodkin in the foolscap. So that goes on to this day. The Queen pricks the names of the High Sheriffs in England on a piece of foolscap, and you become a High Sheriff. So the role of the High Sheriff is working indirectly for the monarch through the Lord Lieutenant of the county. And some of the things you do as a High Sheriff supports the Lord Lieutenant. So you might assist him or his deputy lieutenants at the visits of various members of the royal family. You also, and mainly, have a role to do with the British justice system. You support judges who visit your county. It used to be the case that each county had its own lodgings for judges, and so High Sheriffs, to give them a bit of a change, would invite them to dinner or take them out to dinner or something to look after them. Nowadays in Oxfordshire, there is no lodging, so judges, High Court judges, when they visit, are put up in the hotel. But even the best hotels can be a bit monotonous, so the High Sheriff would look after a High Court judge if he or she came to the county. Each High Sheriff has a theme for his or her year. And my theme was prison reform. I've always worked as a volunteer in prisons since I was about 21, starting, I think, with visiting Holloway prisoners when Holloway was a women's prison. All my prison visiting in Britain has been in London prisons, but I've also prison visited in France and in America. So I've been very lucky to do this work and to be able to learn about the state of our prisons. One of the charities I supported during my year was very much to do with prisons and prisoners, called fine cell work. And here you can see at a big party I gave for so many people who did so much work in the county at Ditchley Park. And here you can see examples of embroidery and needlework made, all of them, by people in prison.
They're beautiful.
Well, there were some lovely, lovely things. What isn't shown in that photograph is an extraordinary carpet, a rug about 6 by 4, something like that. And that is a copy in Ditchley of a rug that was in the sewing room of Lady Anne Tree, who at that stage lived at Ditchley, was a great seamstress, and she founded Fine Cell Work. Mm. The reason this is such a good charity is that it helps prisoners to be calm, to concentrate, and at the end to feel that they have really, and they're quite right, achieved something remarkable. And for a lot of prisoners, they have a sense that they have never achieved anything in their lives. Mm. So I think this is a really good charity to support. And I think that evening in Ditchley, through this pop-up shop, they raised about £3,000.
How wonderful, how wonderful. And there is another picture that you've very kindly given us. And this is these handsome young men who accompany you here. Now, who are they and what's their role, and how important is their role for you as a High Sheriff?
Well, the picture at the moment is still me in my full garb, but when the picture comes up with the police cadets, these were 2 young men chosen by the branch of the police force that deals with encouraging young people, men and women, boys and girls, to support the police. Here we are. And here are the 2 that were chosen for me to help me. Now, why should I need police cadets, as they are called? Well, I needed them because at a lot of events, you need people to show people the entrance to the event, or to look after them if someone feels a little bit ill, to show the way out when that's necessary, and generally to be around, because one person, i.e. the High Sheriff, can't do it all. So these 2 young men were invaluable. I'm so grateful that they gave up their time and came to help me at a great many events.
It's been a wonderful experience for them too, because, you know, to being with you, but also to be at different events and to meet different people and so on.
I hope so. I think it was a less than wonderful experience, I imagine, for the parents who had to ferry them to and fro. But anyhow, it was wonderful for me, and I'm very, very appreciative both of the 2 young men themselves and their parents, but also for the police force of having chosen them to help me.
Now, we live in a beautiful county. Oxfordshire is a wonderful county with great tradition, history, and so on. Was there any area, any place, any that really kind of struck you, that you thought, this is very, you know, kind of, it has a special feeling for you, or you know, just its beauty, or just what they do? And it could be anything, you know, maybe a couple of them, 2 or 3 that memories or areas that really struck you.
Well, it's quite right, as you mention, that as a High Sheriff, you go all round your county. I sometimes found this quite difficult, because I am not the best driver in the world, and I am certainly the worst at finding my way, even with various forms of sat-nav. And I found quite often I got lost. The second time I went down the same one-way street in Amersham, because I was doing something not in Oxfordshire, but another county at that day, I felt in despair. But quite often, the places that I visited were in towns or in parts of towns that I'd never been to before. And so I think particularly of Oxford in that regard, because Oxford has been so redeveloped in recent years that the maps I had quite often didn't cover the new areas that had been built. My first attempt to go, for example, to the Oxford Community Foundation, couldn't find it on the map at all. So I was constantly getting lost. However, other places I visited were towns where I thought there was a mixture of old and new. Banbury is one such. Banbury I went to twice, once for the mayor's annual dinner, which was wonderful. He is a farmer, and so we ate some of his delicious produce from his farm. And the first time I went was for Remembrance Sunday. And that was particularly memorable. First of all, because it took place in an older part of the town, which was slowly being rejuvenated, but also because of the amazing work being done completely voluntarily by citizens of Banbury to raise money for the Royal British Legion. Wonderfully organised and a marvellous event. So that sticks in my mind. I didn't know we had so many representatives of the armed forces in Oxfordshire until I started this work. One of them, of course, I did know about because it's next door to the village where I live. It's RAF Benson. And I was lucky enough to go to a lovely fly past, and it was lovely actually to meet the people who are my neighbours. They're only about 1.5 miles away from Ewelme, but most of whom I'd never met before. So that was memorable.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I suppose we don't hear much about the rural communities, especially the farming communities. And I know I had a small business in Clifton Hampden.
Oh yeah.
And got to know quite a few of the farmers locally there, and it was a wonderful feeling of community, and they do so much.
Huge amount they do. Yeah. In fact, one example that comes to mind is I visited a charity which was allowed to have a large room in Milton Park. And if someone rented the room, they had to move out to another room. And the charity was called Damascus. And it was called Damascus because the letters of the word Damascus spelt out the names of various villages in which the charity had worked with young people over many years. When I visited this charity, I learnt about the work they did in quite a deprived part of Abingdon, and met the young workers who worked with the young people to try to interest them in sport, in conversation, in study, anything to try and break this terrible cycle of gangs and drugs. And the reason I'm mentioning it is that I mentioned this to a man who'd owned a lot of land and farmed it here near Ewelme. And he said he'd like to know more about it, so he went to visit the charity. And he is now in the process of organising, fingers crossed that the coronavirus allows it, in the early summer, visits to a farm by the young people with whom this charity works.
Wonderful.
And I think this is such a useful thing to do. First of all, it teaches townies about the country, which is no bad thing. Secondly, it teaches the farmers and the farming community about the problems of towns. Mm. So it helps bring communities together in ways that perhaps, in fact, I'm sure, do not always happen. So the other way I've been involved in the farming community is through our local shop in Ewelme, which is a community shop. And that shop tries to source local produce as much as possible. There are farmers in the area who supply pigs for Waitrose, so very strict rules on good conditions for their pigs. And a great delight that is for the children of the village to go up on the hill and see the piglets when they're born until they go out of the fields into the sheds. There is a local creamery near us called the Nettlebed Creamery, and that produces cheeses which you can find, at least one of them you can find in Waitrose, called Bix, B-I-X. And the lady who runs that, who is called Rosie Grimmond, she has worked with a very local prison called Huntercombe, so that carefully assessed people who are viewed suitable for day release can go and work there. So this helps her, it certainly helps them, and it's a wonderful joining together again of two parts of the community.
And if I remember correctly, I think when I had the great pleasure of visiting you, you mentioned there were local individuals and companies now making beer, local beer.
Oh, beer and gin all around us. All around. In fact, I have just ordered from our local shop a dozen bottles of a beer made in Wallingford. Utterly delicious, very good indeed. But gin is, I'm not a great gin drinker, but perhaps I shall have to be because it's everywhere now. The nearest one to us in Ewelme is, I think, in South Stoke. And all sorts of varieties of herbs and berries put in to the distilled liquor to create the most wonderful gins. So we're very lucky. And wines, of course. We have a local sparkling wine, and we are from Brightwell Baldwin, and utterly delicious white wines. I've not tasted their reds, but I gather they're good too.
Well, and they're all flourishing, and I thought that's really wonderful. It's wonderful for the county,
yes,
the life of the county, and you know, it's and these are people who are very passionate about what they do.
Absolutely, they are. They add enormously to community life, yes, in Oxfordshire.
And now, of course, we're all living in isolation at the moment. And it's a very difficult time, and one of the inspirations behind the Oxfordshire Community Hub was really just to create content that's interesting and that's diverse from all parts of our county. How are you getting on? How are you coping with this isolation? And what are you doing to keep your spirits up, as it were? Not literally spirits, but you know, how are you keeping yourself positive, as it were?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I don't live alone. I think it must be much more difficult if you do live alone. And if you live alone and you don't have a pet, a cat or a dog or something like that, a bird perhaps, I think it might be quite difficult unless you had very, very strong inner resources. And I've got a friend in Ewelme who is deemed a vulnerable person because of her age and all sorts of illnesses that she's had. Mm. And she is remarkable. 2 walks a day with her dog. Her previous illnesses don't allow her to just do 1 long walk a day, so she has to break it up. And lots of phone calls, lots of emails. If you live alone and you don't have a phone and you can't use the internet, I think it might be a little bit grim. Mm. Books, of course. We've lots of books in this house, so too many. But
talking about
those
books,
help.
Talking about books, I wonder. There are times when I might feel in a particular way, and I will go and pick up a book. It's just right for that moment, and I just wonder whether you have those moments and those books as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I have what I call my comfort books. And my comfort books is when I feel almost too tired to go to sleep. I need something that doesn't tax my brain because I've read it many, many times before, but it's a comfort. And authors who help me in this way are Jane Austen, Dorothy Sayers. I'm a great Dorothy Sayers fan. And Angela Thirkell.
Oh, yes.
Angela Thirkell was a remarkable woman who was descended quite remotely from Trollope. And she did a set of novels, she did other things as well, but mainly a set of novels which were based on the characters in the Barchester Chronicles of Trollope, but a couple of generations or 3 generations on. And they're fascinating books, absolute period pieces, because I was introduced to them by my late mother-in-law, because they tell you about the pre-Second World War and post-Second World War period. And the mores were so different then. So it brings it home to you how times have changed. So those are my comfort books.
And finally, I just wonder whether you'd like to say a message for those who will be listening to this at this very difficult time.
Well, I wouldn't presume to tell other people how to cope with this, but I can say how I'm trying to cope myself, and that is to develop patience. I'm not a very patient person, and so it's a struggle for me, but I'm learning to let go a little bit and be patient. That's the first thing. The second is to be aware of the amazing work done by so many charities in Oxfordshire, of so many people who are homeless, who have mental health problems, or involved with drugs and trying to get away from all of that. And these charities need all the help they can get. So perhaps by, if we're lucky, as I am, perhaps by giving a bit to some of these charities, whichever you think are best for you, that really could help.
Well, thank you so very much for giving up your time today to join us. And may I also just say thank you so much for being our High Sheriff for 2019 and 2020, and for all that you've done for so many charities and for the county. And I wish you all the very best through this very difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Great privilege. Thank you.